Black Country, New Roads, for the first time, is one of the few albums that transcends its anxious and emotional delivery to give an incredibly personal look at relationships from a perspective bathed in pop culture and cynicism. These stories are backed up by instrumentation and vocals that amplify their intensity in a way that affects you on an emotional level. 2 years after the release of their 2 debut singles, Athens, France, and Sunglasses. Those 2 singles are going to be very important to note when talking about this album. But I think we should start at the beginning of the album, where we see the opening track, Instrumental. Instrumental is a good introduction to what you should expect instrumentally. It's funny how they planned it like that, But no, it's a very good hype-up track to what you should expect out of the record. And while not offering anything story-wise, it does kind of ease you in to how intense the record is going to actually be. And that which leads to the next track, Athens, France. And the reason I brought up the fact that the 2 singles they released before the album came out were Athens, France, and Sunglasses was because they made changes to the album version of both of those tracks, and they re-recorded the songs and rewrote a lot of the lyrics. The album version is a lot better produced, and a lot of the lyrical changes feel necessary when talking about a subject matter like this, because it talks about a story from Isaac's past with his now former girlfriend, I'm assuming, and talking about their fractured relationship from their trip to Athens, France. And the fact that the lyrics have changed kind of shows that he's kind of evolved as a person on the song, because a lot of the lyrics that he wrote on both Athens, France, and Sunglasses are kind of petty, because it's talking about a lot about how he thinks his girlfriend acts towards him. Athens, France, in particular, talks about the one-sided sexual nature of their relationship, and the single version has a lot more sexual energy in the song, with how it's delivered and how there are so many references to how vain he thinks his girlfriend is, with some of the lyrics talking about how she mainlines to the UE Boom to play her music, how she has certain songs stuck in her head, specifically the Ariana Grande song Thank You Next, which just kind of shows how intimate songwriting is, just kind of talking about, you know, what this person is like in specific moments, how she views herself, and how he views her viewing herself in a way. Like the lyrics about playlists that she swore she made when she was younger and things like that. It's a very good look at, you know, one moment in their relationship. This album is chopped full of them, but the reason I say that it's more post-breakup is because it's a lot mellower. The original one is a bit more abrasive. The twang of the opening guitar lead has more of a hit than the album version, and overall it's just a lot more raw than the version we see on the album. Although I think both of them are amazing in their own right. I have some slight preference towards the album version just because I like the atmosphere and the mellowness that it gives off to show how his mind has changed since this encounter in Athens, France that he's had. And we also get to see a lot of how the narrator thinks, how Isaac, also known as the guest, thinks about a lot of things. That's what I like about this album, is it's very open and clear of what he thinks. It's just telling you verbatim these thoughts, which even if they don't have any like chronological order or chronological sense, like the next track, Science Fair, which is broken up into 2 different stories, which seem unrelated, but are connected by this really chaotic and seemingly out of control guitar riff, breaks the 2 up, and it just throws you into the chaos of what his mind is going through. What Science Fair is about is how he views women in general, because he's talking about 2 very specific moments in his life, one being a science fair, and how he kind of had this embarrassing moment in his life, which may have shaped his view on women. And also the Circus Olay type performance where he romanticizes the performer who's right in front of him, but ultimately it's unimportant because there are so many other people around him who are also enthralled by this performer. And I think it's one of the best songs on the album because it just shows you his mindset and his really cynical attitude towards everything. Even if it's not really as cohesive as a story as the rest of the songs on the album are, it still is insanely well done. Everything about the song, the atmosphere, the way that the guitars just kind of grate at you, yet they can still hook you in. That's ultimately what made me fall in love with this band, is just the ability they have to hook you in and to get you engaged in the storytelling that they do. And this brings me probably my favorite song on the album, Sunglasses. Sunglasses is about basically the end of the relationship that this album is generally about, because a lot of people have said that both the album versions of the two singles are a lot weaker than the original tracks. While I respectfully disagree, I think that they add to a sort of meta-narrative about the album, because the way that he changes these two songs is very important, making them more mellow and subdued, although still very aggressive, in particular Sunglasses, but it still gives off like a newer perspective on the same story, and that's what I like about it. It feels like looking back at memories from a further moment in time, and I genuinely love it. And Sunglasses, one of the most interesting narratives in music that I've ever heard in my life, because it's about this fight. It's literally about a fight between these two people, and the story is set by describing their house and describing some of the things they like, and then it hits you all at once. It just turns into a yelling match, and despite the fact that the narrator is trying to run away through his sunglasses, you know, proclaiming, "I am invincible in these sunglasses," the voice is still getting through to him, and you feel caught up in the emotions that the narrator is going through, feel caught in the chaos of these two budding perspectives. Although there's not a lot of lyrical changes to this version of Sunglasses, I still think that that small change that they made was necessary, because it makes it feel the single version was taken from one perspective and the album version is taken from the other. You know, it could be either the past and the present, or it could be from one person to another. It's beautiful. You can definitely tell that they were going for something completely different for the song, even though it's the same exact song basically, except for a few lines changed around, because of how melancholic it is. It's still aggressive, of course, but it's sad at the same time. There's a genuine sadness to this version. This song is about, like, the swirl of emotions you feel when you're in that fight. How it ends so unclear, and it just leaves you with this empty, weird mixture of emotions, which kind of is helped by the next track, track X, which is another glimpse of what their relationship was like. And because of how oddly romantic the instrumentals are on track X, it feels like an immediate, like, you know, memory that comes to mind of what you thought the relationship was. It feels like a scene straight out of Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind, where he's going through his relationship bit by bit and kind of seeing, you know, where it fell apart and where it went wrong. And in this song, we see where it went wrong. And it also shows us that the relationship that these two had, Isaac and the anonymous girlfriend that he had, is not as one-sided as something like the original version of Athens, France led us to believe. Oddly heartbreaking for a song that's kind of has this incredibly subdued and soothing instrumental. And that's also helped by the fact that the band also released a version of Track X after the album had come out called Track X The Guest, which, with the changed vocal delivery, sounds like it's being delivered by somebody who's been crying for nights on end. And it's even more heartbreaking to listen to that version than to listen to the album version, because it's just him and his guitar, and it just reeks of loneliness. And that's one of the things I love about this band. They make you value the single versions of the songs, because it kind of has showed us how their feelings have changed on each of the songs. That's what I like about the band. Even though they could just go the simple route and, you know, release the original album with the 6 songs, including 4 of the singles, which were already out before the album had released, it kind of values the album itself. And one of the last songs that was not released as a single was Opus. And Opus, despite the fact that it was one of the first songs recorded for the album, it is still emotional, and it still kind of encloses the album as a whole and as a storytelling narrative, because it's about like the inevitability of relationships falling apart and somewhat of an acceptance of his relationship falling apart. And it still has intensity to it, because it's also about how they felt about Nervous Conditions breaking up after one of the band members was canceled. And it just kind of encapsulates those two different things together into one song. It manages to show us kind of the similarities between losing a relationship and losing the trust you had in someone who you thought was a decent person, but turned out to be a complete fucking asshole. That's why he states on Opus that all that we have built must fall. And it's not about shutting himself off, it's about shutting himself off, but it's kind of like immediately shutting himself off, because he doesn't know how to take anything in. It's just, the song's intensity kind of shows the cavalcade of everything hitting you at once. And that's what I like about this album. It pulls no punches whatsoever with what it wants to say, and it manages to enthrall you on any level, even if you don't like the songwriting. The instrumentation's amazing, and even if you don't like the instrumentations, the vocal delivery is on the fucking spot. Everything about this album is fucking flawless, okay? I have been in love with this album since its release, and every single one of the singles. It has become one of my favorite albums, honestly. And I'm going to give this album a 10 out of fucking 10. Fuck yes. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you got something out of this, and I hope you genuinely check out Black Country New Roads for the first time, because it is an amazing record, and it's a must listen.